The crowds that gathered around North America to watch The Simpsons had come to expect each episode to be not just solid, but full-on transcendent. By this time, The Simpsons was what network executives call an appointment show. That rare breed of TV program you schedule your evenings around, the kind you want to share with your peers. In the consummate college town of Kingston, Ontario, where I kept my Simpsons appointments each Thursday at 8 o'clock, observance of the show verged on a religious rite. Pretty much every bar in town broadcast The Simpsons live every week, because otherwise nobody would show up for cocktails until 8:30 at the earliest. Which is to say that for many of us watching that Thursday night, at Alfie's and elsewhere, the critical bar had been set vertiginously high, and this new episode had only one act left to meet this lofty standard. The show came back on, and the crowd at the pub went quiet. Because Homer is sick, he's been picking away at a rotting 10-foot hoagie for weeks, it has fallen to Selma to take Bart and Lisa to Duff Gardens. Chuckles from the crowd as Bart and Lisa point out 4 of the beer bottle-costumed 7 Duffs: tipsy, queasy, surly, and remorseful. Then somewhat scattered but deeper laughter as they enter the Hall of Presidents to watch tacky animatronic former statesmen, including Abraham Lincoln, recast as Rappin' A.B., sing the praises of Duff beer. Cut to the Simpsons' living room, where Marge and Homer are settling in to watch Yentl. Cut back to Duff Gardens, where Bart, Lisa, and Selma are poking around a souvenir stand. Bart approaches a display of clunky sunglasses. He reads the label. Beer goggles. See the world through the eyes of a drunk. All at once, the pub shook with a single great roaring laugh. It was like a force of nature, this laugh, spontaneous and open-mouthed and enormous. It was as if a train was suddenly there in the room, its horn blaring. It nearly drowned out the next line. Bart puts on the beer goggles and turns to Selma, who has morphed fuzzily into a voluptuous babe, striking a seductive pose. "You're charming the pants off of me," she says in a sultry voice. The laughter seemed to expand exponentially. People were doubled over, had tears streaming down their faces, were pounding tables with fists. I'm not kidding. The gag just destroyed the crowd. It was as if that single gag was written for precisely this audience, an act of clairvoyance in which some TV writer-wizard had invaded the brains of everyone in the bar, rooted around for just the right common reference, and then brought it flawlessly to life. The last few minutes of the show played out to continued laughter, especially after Lisa drinks the water that carries the boats through the Little Land of Duff ride, which causes her to hallucinate like an acid head on a bad trip, and proclaim herself the Lizard Queen. In the end, Selma realizes she wants not a child, but a little version of herself, and the episode closes with her singing Aretha Franklin's Natural Woman to her iguana, Jub Jub. As the credits rolled, the exhausted Alfie's crowd fell to aftershock giggles and happy recountings of newly minted favorite lines. The feeling was much like that moment when the house lights come up after a brilliant musical performance and the audience members blink incredulously at each other, all of them united in the certainty that they have just witnessed something huge, something maybe that's never been seen before. By the standards of The Simpsons' golden age, roughly early 1992 to mid-1997, this was not an extraordinary episode. This was par for the course. This was the minimum payoff that could be expected every week. In Alfie's and 1,000 other campus pubs, in dormitory common rooms and rec rooms and living rooms, in local taverns and sports bars, in all of these and more, we gathered by the millions to watch a TV broadcast that was delivering in half-hour installments a landmark event akin to the Beatles taking the stage on the Ed Sullivan Show. Or, in another, more accurate way, something like the band's whole career. Each week was a new hit single that could delight or enlighten or transform, or do all three at once. This was especially true by the time episode 9F11 slayed the crowd at Alfie's in January 1993. After 2 seasons or so as a clever cartoon, a smart, irreverent, and innovative TV show, The Simpsons had vaulted onto a higher plane of satiric expression. To belabor the Beatles analogy just a little more, The Simpsons had, midway through its 3rd season, pulled off a transformation much like the Fab Four's move from the lovely but featherweight pop of I Wanna Hold Your Hand to the paradigm-shifting complexities of Revolver and Sgt. Pepper. In the fall of 1992 alone, damn near every new episode of The Simpsons that aired had been an instant classic. 9FO2, Lisa the Beauty Queen, offered a vicious but ultimately touching take on beauty pageants, combined with a scathing indictment of cigarette advertising. 8F18, A Streetcar Named Marge, seamlessly, not to mention hilariously, lampooned Broadway musicals, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and The Great Escape. There had also been a genuinely thoughtful meditation on the nature of God, 9F01, Homer the Heretic, an elaborate self-satirizing spoof of movies based on TV shows, 9F03, Itchy and Scratchy the Movie, a reimagining of Lord of the Flies that mercilessly satirized the merchandising machine of the modern entertainment industry, 8F24, Camp Krusty, and a handful of warp-speed romps through gags and references so dense they almost defied cataloging. Episode 9F07, Mr. Plow, for example, took well-aimed satirical shots at infomercials, pretentious Calvin Klein ads, commercials in which middle-aged white men attempt to rap, America's car dependency and the environmental damage wrought by same, and the celebrity-laden, circus-themed variety shows of the 1980s. It featured guest voice performances by Linda Ronstadt, Adam Batman West, and voice-acting genius Phil Hartman, and worked in smart, funny references to Nazi Germany, President George Bush Sr., former Reagan aide and Ross Perot running mate James Stockdale, Leave It to Beaver, the board game Hungry Hungry Hippos, third-rate Fox Network current affairs programs, and Citizen Kane, all in 23 seamless minutes. In subsequent weeks and years, The Simpsons brewed a mix of killer one-off gags, laser-guided social satire, robust character development, and pure comedic joy into a potion so intoxicating that it became by far the most important cultural institution of its time, the equal of any single body of work to emerge from our pop cultural stew in the last century in any medium. It was the Beatles and the Stones. It was Elvis and Chuck Berry. It was that big, that unprecedented, and that important. And it also grew so monumental, so fixed on the cultural map, that it now seems impossible to imagine contemporary pop culture without it. But the rock and roll metaphor is not quite right. Rock and roll hit with the singular force of an atomic bomb, and was indeed a perfect cultural expression of the massive shift in consciousness rent by the splitting of the atom. The Simpsons was more like climate change. It built incrementally, week by week, episode by episode, weaving itself into the cultural landscape slowly but surely until it became a permanent feature, a constant reminder that just beneath the luxurious surface of this prosperous time lurked much uglier truths. Pop music, as the force that more or less invented youth culture, and the force that most clearly defined its first couple of generations, has an inimitable pride of place. There can never again be an explosion to equal Elvis's first shimmies of hip, or the Beatles' first tosses of mop top. This, indeed, was a key component of the evident malaise that afflicted pop culture in the early 1990s. The question of the death of rock comes up because rock and roll, as a cultural force rather than as a catchphrase, no longer seems to mean anything, decreed the rock critic Grail Marcus in the August 1992 issue of Esquire. It no longer seems to speak in unknown tongues that turn into new and common languages, to say anything that is not instantly translated back into the dominant discourse of our day, the discourse of corporatism, selfishness, crime, racism, sexism, homophobia, government propaganda, scapegoating, and